So it is Friday. Oh, it's March. It's March the 1st now. So I'm drinking hot lemon and honey, which I love. And I normally don't drink it just for the hay of it. I generally drink it when I'm worried that I might be sick or might come down with something. And I went to public professor, the geography of circumstance. The lecturer was Tom Johnston, and I'd had him as an instructor when I went to the university. And he's a really entertaining lecturer. So anyway, I highly recommend that everybody attend these public professor series things that the university puts on, because you get free food. So if you like learning and you like free food, well, this is just for you. They're on pretty much just about monthly in the winter months. So from September until there's the next one is March 21st. And yeah, there was a lot of meat at yesterday's buffet, but I don't know. But I did have the vegetables with a lovely artichoke spinach dip. So I'll talk about some of the notes that I made. Cohort effect. Individuals of a particular point of time share beliefs, site, particulars of a given location, soil, precipitation, economic activity, etc. Situation, relative location, proximity to wherever. Geography of food insecurity. Atlantic Canada, population still falling by percentage. Concept of food security didn't always include preferences, but now it does. 1.6 million households in Canada have some kind of food insecurity, largely related to income, geographic variable, highest insecurity in Nunavut, Indigenous in small isolated communities where food is expensive, $10.39 for 4 liters of milk with northern subsidy in Nunavut, over $20 without the subsidy. 2016, 820 acres is an average farm size. And 2 groups are especially at risk. One is the rural elderly due to agriculture industrialization, and 2 zones of transition between downtown and affluent neighborhood. Food deserts. If you aren't of income high enough, money spent on cab or transit isn't spent on the food that you need. Everything outside the circle, he had circles on a map, is considered food desert areas. Walking distance darkest areas are food swamps. So where we were at the Sandman Signature Lethbridge Lodge, and near the university, I guess they're food swamps because there's, he says they are, because there's a lot of fast food and stuff like that available. But, I mean, is that really food? And we're going to be talking about that a little bit. And also, I wanted to point out his circles were really small. James and I were talking about that because we had no problem. We walked, like I met James at the thing. I walked from here to there. It was not a big walk for me. This is just, if you're accustomed to walking, you can walk further. And it's not a big deal. It's just, once you're active, if you're an active person, then activity is not a deterrent. You can do it. And it's not a big deal. So anyway, I walked that far. It's not a big deal. I can do that any old day. In fact, I walk that far every day. Easily. I'd already walked quite a few places earlier in the day. I wasn't tired or anything. It was not a big deal. It was like nothing. So, but his circles on the map were so small that maybe it was a couple blocks. He expected people would only, a healthy person would only be able to walk a couple blocks, and it's like, really? That's it? Then that person's not a healthy person, if you know what I mean. Now he's a big man, Tom Johnston, and maybe he doesn't realize that those circles should have been a lot bigger. Because I was walking to physiotherapy at the hospital, no problem from here. I can walk a lot of places. Now there are actual food desert locations in cities, like in suburbia. There's a lot of places where I've been to a lot of subdivisions where they don't even have sidewalks on both sides of the street. There's probably subdivisions where there's no sidewalks at all. Well, where are you going to walk then? On the street? And that's not entirely safe. And plus, they're all set up so that you can't easily get from one place to another. The roads are not grid. They're windy and weird. So I do think that there are food deserts in cities, in suburbia. But I'm not there. And those circles were crazy small. But he says London Road is a food desert, and I don't know how, because there's a London Road market just a couple blocks away. And sure, the food might be a little bit more expensive, but honestly, like I walked to No Frills the other day. Not a big walk for me. And I got garlic, ginger, and red cabbage. I got quite a lot of ginger, because I go through quite a lot. But anyway, most of my groceries are just things like that. They're not that expensive. I spent $12.83 on groceries, and that's good for the week. I mean, I go through a lot of lemons too, but I didn't have to get them on that. But anyway, it doesn't really matter, I've found, what you spend on cabbage, because it's so cheap anyway. It doesn't matter. You don't have to wait for it to go on sale, and just get it. Same thing with ginger these days, and garlic. Cheap. Who cares? So if you have to get it at a little market like London Road Market, which I am quite sure if I went in there, they would carry cabbage, garlic, and ginger. But I don't. I can easily walk to No Frills, so I walk to No Frills. Anyway. But this is not a food desert, is my point. I'm close to everything here. I can walk to the library easily to get these wonderful documentaries, and I can easily go get food. It's not a big deal. So, you said a loan income for a lone female in London Road is $28,000. That's really low. I didn't realize, and the lone male income was higher, like quite a bit higher. So there's still some. I didn't realize it was that bad until I saw that. But anyway, healthcare cost of diabetes over 5 years is $16,000. Healthy person over 5 years is $6,000. So his point was people should worry about the health of citizens, like whether they're in a food desert or not. Because they might end up with diabetes, and then they cost more to take care of. So, anyway, I did have, James and I spent a lot of time talking about this lecture once we got home, because we like to talk about things like this, and we don't think that his analysis was accurate, and circles were crazy small. Anyway, but I enjoyed it, and I would highly recommend everyone shows up for March the 21st. You can figure out how to get there. It's not that hard. Anyway, but what I wanted to say about this is it's a buffet style, right? So you use these tongs. And so I'm in a huge lineup waiting to get food. And I get food for James, a plate for James and a plate for myself. And I'm using these tongs on them. Anyway. And everybody touches the tongs. I remember when I was at the cancer clinic in Edmonton, there were volunteers that kept inviting us to have cookies and tea with them. So finally when James was healthy enough and we felt okay, so we went to have cookies and tea with them. And they had tongs there to grab the cookies for like, and each person was grabbing these tongs, and I was trying to tell them, well, it's actually healthier if a person were to just touch the cookie and not touch any other cookie, then touch those tongs, because you're eating finger food with fingers that have touched the tongs that have touched lots and lots of other fingers. So essentially, I had, like, I don't know, maybe 300 or more people's hands in my mouth, because I'm eating finger food then, right? But not all of it was finger food. But it's pretty hard to eat a crunchy chip thingy with a fork. It will just snap if you try and you have to scoop it up very hard. So, chopsticks now, I could have handled. But I might have to bring just a wet nap or something, so that I can wash my hands and then, yeah, anyway. Or I could have figured something out and it would have been smarter. But I did not, and I was thinking about it the whole time I was there. I'm like, 1,000 people's hands in my mouth. So I'm drinking hot lemon and honey. But yeah, the women at the cancer clinic, they couldn't understand that I was trying to say, well, the tongs are not clean, and they're like, we just clean them. And I'm like, okay, but now everybody's touched them. So I don't know where everybody else's hands have been. Anyway. So, I'm going to talk about a few documentaries that I watched yesterday while I was working on this painting. And I'm putting them in order of the worst ones I found to the best ones. And I think this is a good order to watch them in, because then you're left with something you're like, oh, they made a good documentary at the end, right? So I would recommend that everybody watches all of these, even though I wouldn't recommend you watch this on its own because it's really quite garbagey. But, so I'll talk about my notes. So this is the first one. And this is The Chocolate Diet. Scientific hoax goes viral. So, I'm just gonna try to not knock them down on the floor. And it's not working out for me. How did I have them propped up here before? So, some guys wanted to show how many bogus scientific articles are published, so they created a bogus study of their own. They really show nothing. The message here comes across as don't trust scientific articles, when it should be don't blindly trust anyone, even those claiming to be using science to support their claims. We need to educate ourselves and take responsibility for our own actions and research. This documentary doesn't say this, and I think it's dangerous for most people to watch it. I think most people are reluctant to do their own research and would rather avoid making healthy choices which lead to permanent weight loss. This documentary helps these people avoid learning. So really, I didn't think this was very good. Most people would just go, oh yeah, well, science is stupid. I don't know. Now this one, another stupid one, but he does make a point about people needing to be responsible for their own education, sort of thing, and research, which I just said. So I put it in this order. This one, Eating You Alive. No. I put that 1 second. Oh no, I'm gonna have to change my order. That's because I watched it in that order. So I have already watched Eating You Alive before, but I accidentally got to go to the library, and it fits with this set, so I'll talk about it in a minute. Fathead. So this is the one I'm director's cut. You've been fed a load of bologna. Bologna? It's a documentary that claims saturated fat doesn't cause heart disease, and cholesterol has nothing to do with heart disease. Tom Naughton, Sheriva Naughton, and Grant Naughton made this. Who are they? So this is the first question I'm asking, is these people have the same last name, Naughton, and what's their background, right? They say Super Size Me was baloney. He says that people don't have to eat fast food, or they don't have to, if somebody says, hey, you want to supersize that, you can say, no thank you. So anyway, that's true. They can choose to look into the nutrition of the food they eat. They can choose to exercise. Metabolic syndrome is the real epidemic. He says that he is getting a lot of calories from fat on his fast food diet. He's technically obese. He says that people ate loads of animals originally and little starch, and grain is the big problem now. Newest theories for heart disease is that inflammation and oxidation are the cause, not cholesterol. HDL carries LDL back to the liver. He says eating saturated fat increases HDL. Small dense type B LDL is most harmful. Small LDL can penetrate a damaged artery and form plaque. Small LDL is increased by high carb diet. He's showing black and white footage. Diet has little or nothing to do with heart attacks. Notice how much his experts are blinking when they speak. People who are knowingly lying have a higher blink rate. The higher the cholesterol, the longer you live if you're a woman, says the blonde woman with no title of education level listed. He usually had their titles, but she has nothing. She also says that animal fat is needed to be healthy. He drinks diet soda in the show. The blonde says we've never had soy or corn oil in the human diet before, but humans did eat whole soy and whole corn. Omega-6 fats cause inflammation and they lead to heart disease. KFC was using trans fats to fry chicken. CSPI, that's Center for Science and Public Interest, is to blame for industry switch from saturated fat to trans fat. Radical vegetarian nutcases, that's a quote, scared people away from animal fats and to trans fats. Blonde with no title blames scientists and doctors. Rise in heart disease, obesity, and diabetes is about carb. Grain-based diet is not natural for any mammal, says the fake blonde perm man with the mustache. He had a title, but I don't remember. Glycemic index glycemic index. Whole vegetable have lower glycemic index, but grains have increased glycemic index. Have a higher. Yeah. You eat more because you're getting fat. He says, I don't know. It all depends on how slowly your fat cells release your fat. So, insulin sends fat into fat cells. Cells can become resistant to the effect of insulin, so body produces more insulin. If you're eating too many carbs, more fat is stored. Pancreas produces as much insulin as possible, and it still isn't enough, so you end up with diabetes. Now, at the beginning of this, he had been putting down the, what do you call it? The guy, the Super Size Me guy. I don't know. The guy who did that video. And he was saying you can, he's making that up. You can eat the fast food diet. And he'd listed off the things that the guy followed. And it was something like every time he was asked if he would supersize, he would supersize. So he had rules to his study, and he followed them. So he was going to eat everything on the menu at least once during the course of his month on the diet, and whenever he was asked to supersize, he would. So this guy, he was saying that the guy who was doing the supersize me thing was a big liar, and you can eat fast food and you're not gonna get unhealthy, whatever. He changed the parameters of the study for his own study. So he did not follow the guy's diet, and pay attention to that, and how he changed that. So anyway, where am I? So he limited his carbs to under 100 carbs per day. And he lost weight on his diet, 7.5 pounds. His cholesterol decreased, his fat decreased. He cut out all sugar and starch out of his diet and ate cheeseburgers without buns and ate plenty of fruit with heavy cream and vegetables drowned in butter, his cholesterol dropped, HDL increased. He's read dozens of books. He said dozens of books. I'm quoting. Read dozens of books and hundreds of studies. And he thinks that's a lot. He's bragging about it. Dozens of books. He says that the experts say kids need a lot of carbs to fuel their brains. Really? What experts? Because I haven't read that. You know, I've read a lot more books than he has. And omega-3 is what people generally say fuels brains of children. Omega-3 fatty acids. So carbs? Who said that? Like, he doesn't supply that information because I've never come across it. Anyway, he moved to a farm and he now raises his own food. Whatever. Garbage. So, Eating You Alive. Now, I've watched this before, and understand I'm a strong believer in whole food, plant-based diet, but this is not at the end of this group. It's in the middle. And this documentary is a bit disappointing. It's about diet and chronic disease. One woman says dairy is one of the most toxic things you can put in your body. I wouldn't even call it food, that's a quote. Many of the same people, never mind. Acute care model is used today to treat chronic disease, but it doesn't work. MD says you maybe get 1 to 2 hours on nutrition. Another MD says the average physician gets 20 minutes training on nutrition. 95% of America has no idea what to eat. TV taught them, says another MD. Aging in America is accumulated abuse on the body, says another MD. Each decade, Americans have been eating more fat, more meat, more sugar, and more calories, and each decade they get heavier. One woman says that she believes food is more addictive than alcohol and drugs. The thing is, foods are drugs. That's the reality. Chemists are employed by food industry to find ways to reach the bliss point in processed foods. They had a quote by Yoda in this show. So you know that's some quality information. They're putting down diets. You're fine on the diet, but then you get off the diet and you gain all the weight back and maybe more. Duh. You weigh less when you eat healthier and fewer calories, and then you weigh more when you eat your personally designed obesity diet? That's surprising to people. Can the South Beach or Mediterranean or other diets really be blamed for people's yo-yoing? When will they take responsibility for their own choices? We need education more than medication, is a quote in there. Yes, but education is available for free, and Americans are avoiding educating themselves. This is really the root of the problem. Healthiest diets are plant-based. The foods that are subsidized, sugar and livestock feed crops. Cavities are completely preventable through diets. He then suggests that the plaque on teeth might be related or be a sign of. The plaque in our arteries. 6 to 8 hours after holiday meals, the heart attack and stroke patients showed up at the emergency. Stint only solves one little spot. Erectile dysfunction is a warning to cardiovascular disease. Penis's vessels are small, I guess. Damage to endothelium begins when excess LDL cholesterol enters vessel walls. The resulting inflammatory response triggers immune cells called macrophages, which enter vessel wall and gobble up LDL. This creates large cholesterol-laden foam cells, which accumulate and build plaque from inside out, causing a pimple-like area. Covering of these pimples can rupture, triggering a blood clot that can block normal blood flow to an area, resulting in a heart attack or a stroke. Most Americans consume 250 to 700 calories of oil a day. Oil injures endothelial cells. Coconut oils, 90% saturated fat. Lard is 43% saturated fat. Casein promotes cancer. Dairy increases risk of type 1 diabetes, which irreversibly harms pancreas. T. Colin Campbell, chemo is not working for the most part. They put on a quote by Stephen R. Covey. Samuel L. Jackson, no dairy, no oils, no nuts, no meats, no sugar, and his health improved. Hispanics have increased rate of diabetes. Want limb removal, medications, kidney transplant, blindness, diabetes, type 2, thought caused by sugar, white bread. It's really caused by fat buildup on cells. Then they show a lot of video clips of animal cruelty. 1/3 of landmass devoted to livestock agriculture. One burger is 4,000 gallons of water. Short shower is 20 gallons. Long shower is 40 gallons. Stop eating animals to improve environmental health. Then they waste a lot of time listing different foods you can eat. Buy a big bag of rice, big bag of beans, and frozen veggies, and a family can live on $60 a month. Somebody says in that. I don't know. So, not that good. But now we're on to modified. A food lover's journey into GMOs. Now, there's some subtitles in this one. It's a documentary about GMOs. Jane Goodall is interviewed in this. She says that governments aren't representing the people, but are representing industry on this issue. Public has consistently wanted labeling of GMOs when polled. Altered Genes, Twisted Truth is the book that the young woman is shown reading while she's laying in the hammock, in case anybody wants to pick that up. GMO foods have lowered nutrition. They mention that revolving door of FDA and industry, expert says virtually unregulated. And you know I hate it when I hear that word. A scientist is saying that the fact that GMOs aren't labeled makes the consumer more suspicious of these products. She says there's a problem with labeling requirements. When a producer must label that water is added,